A couple of weeks ago, I had one of my students come down at the golf projects for a lesson, really suffering with thinning his golf shots. He was swinging up to the top, making contact with the golf ball from the leading edge of the club face, this area here, right at the bottom of the club head, which was causing all sorts of outcomes. Those tops, those thins, you name them, really suffering with distance, accuracy, but especially the strike. And there was two things I noticed in his swing in particular. One, which I believe is the key to why 93% of golfers really struggled to strike their irons pure. And for those of you who are new to the channel, welcome. My name is Harry, PGA Golf Professional, transforming golfers worldwide down here at the golf projects. And feel free to drop a comment down below with tips or drills, video topic you would like me to cover in a future video. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about a student of mine, Joe, who came to see me really suffering with topping the golf shots, thinning the golf shot, struggling to get that center strike. And this key change that we made to his golf game is something I really do believe it's going to help. You're not going to see 20, 30 more yards of distance, but I can guarantee something. You will start to notice more compressed, much better pure strikes with all your irons. So in order to thin the golf ball, we would have to do one of these two things. The first one is swinging on the downswing, early extending, seeing your upper body lift up like so, which effectively moves the club head further away from where the golf ball would be, which would cause those thin golf shots. Number two, which is the key we're going to be discussing in this video, where we're noticing a lot of the golf shots go well out the leading edge of the club face. And it's all to do with the low point. A simple way for me to describe what the low point is, it's the lowest point where the club head reaches in relation to the ground. And this can be obviously lower than the ground when we're compressing those iron shots and getting that ball then turf interaction. When we get that ball and turf interaction, that would be when the club obviously makes contact with the golf ball and then it goes lower into the ground. There's compressed iron shots we notice. So the low point would be ahead of the golf ball, somewhere around in this position here, this point here, as opposed to being behind the golf ball. And what we noticed with Joe was the low point was taking place behind the golf ball somewhere here. And once the low point takes place, think about it this way, the swing works in an arc, up and down. So from backswing to downswing to on the way through. And I can create a circle around my body to locate that swing arc. So once the low point happens, the lowest point of this swing circle, this swing arc, what's going to happen? The club head is going to lift upwards because of this swing arc, the circular motion. So what we were noticing with Joe was his lowest point of his swing arc was before the golf ball, and then from there the club head was lifting up, and therefore the club head, with it being lifting up like so, in this position here, it's going lowest point here, then lifting up like so, causing that leading edge to make contact with the golf ball first, either topping or thinning those golf shots. But the question is, why was this taking place? Why wasn't he getting that downward motion into the golf ball? And it's all to do with his trail arm at the beginning of his downswing. What we noticed in Joe's swing was that as he was starting his downswing, so starting in this movement here, the transition phase in the golf swing, the first move that he would make with his trail arm was extending this trail arm almost and getting disconnected from this side of the body. So the trail arm being the right arm for Joe as a right-handed golfer, as soon as he was starting that downswing, we're noticing the width of arc, the distance between the hands and the chest increase like so. When we increase this motion here, you can see the right arm, the trail arm, gets disconnected from the body this way, dragging outwards. And when you think about it this way, the swing works an arc, yep. So when we cast on the outside this way, we're effectively pushing our swing circle further away from that swing center. So think of the swing center as this point here, the center of our chest, and where the club and ball are, imagine that as one straight line from this position here. Well, if we were to swing to the top and then push the hands further away, we're pushing our swing circle further away from that golf ball. So the low point is going to be somewhere around this position here, and then from there we're having to lift upwards just from this swing circle being naturally on that circular motion, making those thin golf shots take place because we're hitting almost on the upward motion. But in reaction to this, what Joe was doing was he was getting to this position here, pushing his hands further away, and knowing subconsciously that he would eventually hit the ground if he stayed in this position, he would then bring his arms very close to his body like so, to try and keep those hands ahead of the club face here. Otherwise, if we kept those extended like so, we'd notice this sort of impact position here where the lower body and upper body are switched off and the club head itself is well ahead of the hands. So what he was doing from here, he was pushing his hands away, getting this trail arm disconnected from the body. From this position here, he was extending upwards, but also to avoid hitting the ground, he was bringing his hands closer to his body. And look what that does to my arms. They both are flexing. They're going from nice and extended, especially this lead arm, from extension here to flex in this position here, which is very inconsistent. So when he gets this motion here, think of this part as the low point, and then once he brings the hands closer to him, that club head now is going closer to me. So imagine that as the beginning of that upward motion on the circle. So if I was just to take a hula hoop here now, just to give you a really good example, and I was to place this on the ground, you should be able to see a different camera angle now, and I place it like so here. Well, once we've started that downswing move, because we've cast on the outside, we're effectively moving that swing circle this way. And if I was to bring that now on this angle here, the club would reach the ground well before the golf ball and then bring it up here. So this motion here is due to that casting motion, getting the low point behind the golf ball, and the second thing he was doing in reaction to this was bringing the hands too close to the body, causing those thinned golf shots and getting that upward motion from that swing arc. It's amazing what hula hoops come in handy for, isn't it? So we came up with a goal. The goal was to get this swing arc, rather than moving away from the center and getting too far behind the golf ball, we want that swing arc to shift ahead of the center. So imagine that hula hoop being on the ground. I'm just going to show you it right now, from being behind the golf ball to effectively moving it almost ahead of that golf ball. And what this is going to allow him to do is get that angle of attack more in the downward motion and get those compressed pure strikes with the irons. But in order to do this, we don't just want to be trying to hitting down onto the golf ball like so, because that's going to cause us to get way too steep onto the golf ball, and then all of a sudden we'll get way too steep, very stuck, and then we'll jump upwards and probably cause that same outcome. Either get too steep and hit the ground well before the golf ball, or we end up jumping upwards and then getting that upward motion and hitting those thin golf shots. So we don't want to be just forcing those hands to go working downwards towards the ball, because that's not going to do your swing any good. You want to be doing these two things instead. And the question was, for me as the coach, having a look at his swing and digesting all the information, was, well, what can we do to start off with to help him get this trail arm more connected to the body during the downswing phase, to help us shift that swing arc further towards the net ahead of the golf ball, as opposed to going further away. And what we did dead simply was we grabbed a towel. We got a golf towel and placed it under the trail armpit to start the golf swing. And what we did with the towel before we started looking to changing anything to do with the transition and downswing was to ensure that the right arm, his trail arm, was set in the correct position. Because if we were to go and bring this towel right next to the armpit like so in this position here, the right forearm is very much what we call internally rotated in this position here. And the problem is, if I was to set up like so with the right arm very much twisted in this motion here to start the golf swing, and I take the club head back trying to keep the towel in, I can go up to this point here, but then from there I'm going to drag the arms this way because my arm is internally rotated. So it's really important that we get this checkpoint before we kick things off with the downswing. So I'm going to get you to feel this right arm here, the trail arm for left-handed golfers, it's going to be the left arm. You're going to set the right arm in this position here like so, and rather than gripping the club going this way and getting this twisting motion, internal rotation into the body, we're going to twist that away from the body in this position here. So get that right palm just like this here. So once we've got that trail arm set up into this position here, we're making sure that we've got the towel in front of us to grip the club. I'm actually going to do this without the club just to make it a little bit easier. I suggest doing the same as well. Externally rotate it right out in front of us, giving ourselves plenty of room to place the towel out in front of us and tucking that trail arm in front of us, as opposed to getting this internal rotation and tucking it on the external side of the body, so away from the center. The problem is when we get this motion here tucking on this side and we swing all the way up to the top, if we can keep the towel in, we're going to be like this and dragging it almost this way. But on the downswing, as we start to rotate, we're going to get stuck in this position here and then have to early release and get those shots going way to the left, and that's not going to help with the strike either. So make sure we've got that towel out in front of us, gripping it with this externally rotated position, gripping the club, and now we're all set to make and start making a couple of practice swings doing this. This is what we started off with for Joe. We started off with very slow swings, just getting used to this motion, working it up to the top, really feeling like we're squeezing that towel into the body and keeping it tucked in all the way through to the finished position. It was quite difficult for him to finish off that swing. You'd almost have to get into this position here, but we just allowed the club to be swung up until around this position here, this point in the golf swing. It's almost where the club just reaches vertical to the ground. And once we started getting used to what this feels like, we could start to bring in the golf ball and start hitting a few shots doing this, but starting off with slower swings. So all I'm going to do here now is I'm just going to start off with a few slow swings just like Joe did, ensuring this trail arm is externally rotated into this position here, gripping the club. And what we're going to do is, as we make our swing back and forth, we're going to feel like we're just keeping that towel tucked into the body all the way throughout our swing. So it's up, and you could hear the difference in that strike there, way more compressed. And for me, because I'm so used to doing this, that was -5 on the downward motion. I've got an 8 iron here, so that is pretty good. And what we noticed for Joe was we were noticing from seeing that almost 0 mark, for the low point, we were starting to get them in the -1, -2 area. And our goal was to get it in around that -3, but if we could hit -4, then brilliant. So once Joe hit a couple of shots at that slow pace, we started to increase the speed a little bit more, really trying to encourage a much faster swing to take place, just so that he was getting used to this sensation of keeping this trail arm more tucked into the body and bringing that swing circle, as opposed to casting out on the outside and shifting the swing circle away from the golf ball. Our aim, of course, as mentioned earlier, was to get the swing circle shifting towards the net. So we've got this arm tucked in like so in this externally rotated position. To do that, we're keeping it tucked in, and you can see that the difference in where the club was before, reaching well outwards, pushing the swing circle outwards like so, as opposed to getting in this circle here and bringing the club closer to us almost, but it's shifting that swing circle ahead of the golf ball. At the start of the lesson, what we also noticed was that the majority of the shots, I would say as a rough estimate, around 8 out of 10 shots he hit were very much thinned golf shots. We managed to bring this down to around that 4 to 5 out of 10 mark. So there was still room for improvement, lots more work to do doing this. So after at least 10 minutes or so, getting Joe used to this motion of bringing and keeping that towel tucked into the body, as we noticed last minute, sometimes he would just get this almost chicken wing motion here, still cast that club on the outside, although he's keeping that right arm more tucked into the body, and then almost thinning those golf shots and increasing that angle of attack. So there was something else that we did, something else that massively changed everything for him. Rather than seeing the angle of attack being a tiny bit on the downward motion, yes, improving the strikes, but nowhere near as much as we could be, to then seeing way more compressed iron shots, seeing way more distance and accuracy also. And dead simply, we did the exact same thing, keeping this towel tucked into the body, and we got an alignment stick as an object to avoid and placed it very much so on the internal side of his right heel in this position here. So you can see there now I've got this set up here. I'm just going to move that alignment stick closer to the heel. That's almost touching my right heel here, and there's around 4 inches behind the golf ball, there's the alignment stick placed on the ground. So the idea of this is, all I said to Joe was avoid that alignment stick, do the exact same motion, just avoid hitting that alignment stick. What did that do? That forced him to really press forward on the downswing, bringing this swing arc more ahead of the golf ball, more downward angle of approach into the golf ball, and that's when we started to see 10 to 11 yards more of distance, seeing that average go from 122 to 123 to 135, 136 on average, and improving the strike. This was all just from improving that strike, and this just shows how much of a difference it can make if you start getting that compressed iron shot in your golf game. We're just making sure, remember this, we're making sure we're getting that external rotation, placing the towel underneath the arm, tucking it in like so, gripping the club. Now we've got this all set in, ready to go. To start off with for Joe, we just got him doing a few slow swings. We didn't want to go full out with the alignment stick there because it can be quite awkward. If we end up hitting that alignment stick, it's going to reduce our confidence massively. So we just started off with pretty much still full swings, but only trying to hit the golf ball 50 yards of an A-time. So we just set up like so, up to the top, really encourage that towel to stay tucked into the body, and then avoiding that alignment stick. So we just made a few swings nice and slow up to the top and just doing our best to avoid that alignment stick. There was a couple of times from doing this we get a little bit this way and then end up hitting an alignment stick, but that was a great indication for him, especially when he's not got me watching him, that actually that was where the low point is, behind the golf ball as opposed to ahead of the golf ball. So once he hit a couple more shots doing this, that's when we started to increase the speed a little bit more. I just said, right, try and hit this one 70 yards now 90 yards, 110, and then 130, and then we pushed him at his maximum just to really get that sensation of what it feels like at full speed, really compressing his iron shots. We even got a few carrying over the 140 mark just from doing these two moves. So just as a recap, you're going to take this towel, place it underneath the armpit in front of you with this external rotation in the right arm like so. When it comes to setting up like this here, we've got the alignment stick placed in this position here, just on the internal side of the right heel. Don't let the towel come away from the body and avoid that alignment stick. Let's do a full swing doing this. So that was way more compressed, much lower penetrating shot, a little bit to the left. That's what I'm struggling with a little bit more at the moment, but the attack angle was great, -5 again. So I hope this helps you. Feel free to drop a comment down below the tips or drills video you'd like me to cover in a future video. And by all means, if you've come this far, feel free to hit that subscribe button because it helps my channel grow and produce more great content like this for you to help you transform your golf game. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.